Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pierce. The Ukraine war, well, no, is it? It is going to start with the Ukraine war, and we're going to go on to Canada and Greenland and the destruction of friendships around the world and global destabilization. It is nuts. I've got a whole, a 50 tab video to do on what's rumbling on in the UK with Musk and extra stuff to throw in and the harnessing of social media and how Zuckerberg and Meta and all these other entities are aligning themselves and genuflecting to the American, I would say, autocracy, plutocracy, oligarchy presidency. And that's going to have to wait because what's happened? Well, Trump has done a press conference that is, on the one hand, batshit crazy, and on the other hand, his acolytes will be feverishly sweating with joy. Let's start with Ukraine. And we're going to start with the idea that Trump is not on the right side. So if you still think Trump loves a bit of fairness and freedom and liberty and democracy, you are just wrong. You are not right. You are wrong. You know, Trump is a dictator wannabe, right? He wants to be a strongman dictator, and everything's falling into place to make this look like it is the case. He's not an anti-war president because he's now threatening Canada, Panama, Denmark, Mexico, all his allies and none of his enemies. And this is deeply, deeply worrying. And if you're a big supporter of that, then we're going to be talking past each other. So he has said the West understands that Ukraine cannot be in NATO. So Trump said that he is aware of Putin's readiness to contact him, but considers this unacceptable until his official return to the White House. Well, about the only sensible thing he said recently. Donald Trump now hopes to end the war against Ukraine within 6 months, a shift from the earlier claim of resolving it in just 24 hours. So this idea that he's now accepting he's going to end the war in 6 months, you could say, oh, he's changed his mind because he's learnt some new things. Well, he shouldn't have been shouting his mouth off. So what I said before, he's either deeply ignorant and irresponsible for saying things he shouldn't say, or he's disingenuous and lying to his audience knowingly. There is no excluded middle. There is no other option. This is not a false dichotomy. This is a dichotomy. This is, he's either one or the other. And if you're a big fan of Trump, you've got to admit that he's either deeply ignorant or he's disingenuous and a liar. Because any sensible human being knows that you can't solve this war within 24 hours. And then he said, even before I take my position on the 20th of January. So he said, I'm even going to solve it in 24 hours before I'm president, while I'm still president-elect. Now he's saying, then people are like, oh no, he really meant a day after inauguration. So they're just going to ignore what he said about even before the inauguration. And now Trump is saying, well, 6 months. Okay. So you were lying to us, or you were dumb enough to think you could do that. This is a bloody world war. You don't solve it in 24 hours. So what do we do with this? Do we just accept that? Do you, if you're a fan of Trump, if you're a Trump supporter and you voted for him, do you accept that and say, okay, he was lying, but that's fine. I like him from all this other stuff. What is this other stuff? Wanting to, I don't know, forcibly take Denmark, wanting to, insulting the Canadian Prime Minister and wanting to make Canada the 51st state of America. Is that the stuff you really want? It's okay if he lies to us about ending the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. That's cool. It's not cool. We should not normalize lying or outright stupidity. Trump blames Biden for provoking Russia's war by supporting Ukraine's NATO aspirations. Ukraine aspiring to NATO is Ukraine's thing. It's not Biden's thing. Biden didn't want, he doesn't even know. This is wrong. Biden was against Ukraine joining NATO throughout the course of this war. Before the war, NATO didn't want Ukraine because it was too, they were working maybe on a long-term interoperability and training up the armed forces with NATO doctrine in mind and equipment. But that was a 10, 20, 30-year thing. since Russia have invaded, people have been saying, oh, Ukraine has said we want to join NATO. It's the US and Germany have been the ones to say, no, we're not up for them joining NATO. So again, like, he's either deeply ignorant or he's lying. Like, what is it? He either doesn't know what's gone on in global geopolitics in the history of his own nation in the last 3 years with what Biden's actually said, or he's lying to you. Which is it? Because neither is acceptable. Neither of these points is acceptable. He says, I could understand Russia's feeling about that. Oh, so now he's showing sympathy for Russia. Oh, I understand how you feel. You know, Biden wanting Ukraine to join NATO. That's not. This is horrific, right? If you're a supporter of Ukraine and a supporter of democracy and a supporter of global freedoms in the world, then what he's saying is deeply, deeply worrying. So Donald Trump has blamed the US for Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Let's listen to him.
So, a big part of the problem was Russia for many, many years, long before Putin said you could never have NATO involved with Ukraine. Now, they've said that that's been like written in stone. And somewhere along the line, Biden said, no, they should be able to join NATO. Well, then
no,
Russia has
not true. And also, Russia getting involved in 2014 was nothing to do with NATO expansionism. Go and look at what Putin has said. Go and look at what happened with the discussions in Berlin with Gorbachev, and see whether there was this idea about NATO not inching further east in Berlin, and see whether that was actually what was agreed. No, it wasn't agreed. So this is myth and fiction.
Doorstep, and I could understand.
I can understand
about that.
No,
but there were a lot of mistakes made in that negotiation. And when I heard the way that Biden was negotiating, I said, you're going to end up in a war. And it turned out
you ain't heard jack, mate. You've not listened to any negotiations. You've been playing golf, for frick's sake. We've been sitting here watching this stuff. I've been dealing with this over 12 hours every single day for the last 3 years. You haven't. Don't tell me you've been listening to negotiations. You don't know shit. You do not know enough.
To be a very bad war. And it could escalate. That war could escalate to be much worse than it is right now.
Sorry for swearing.
Well, my view is that it was always understood. In fact, I believe that they had a deal, and then Biden broke it. They had a deal which would have been a satisfactory deal to Ukraine and everybody else, but that Biden said, no, you have to be able to join NATO. So
I'm not. I don't know where he's got that from. I mean, at least he said, I'm on the understanding that, well, So, as this source says, Donald Trump blamed the US for Putin's invasion of Ukraine, claiming it was due to US's support of Ukraine's NATO membership. He also repeated the Kremlin lie that the US sabotaged a deal between Ukraine and Russia. Now, my opinion, as it says here, what an effing traitor. My opinion is that he doesn't know enough. So, who's telling him this? So, on the one hand, I blame Trump a load because he's not fact-checking this. Why is he not fact-checking this? Because he doesn't read, right? He doesn't read books. He doesn't read articles. He's fed certain excerpts of certain articles that fit in with a worldview. Now, is it fitting in with his own worldview or the worldview of people feeding him that? So actually, there's a deeper problem here, that the people around him are not correcting him when he's saying this, because actually he's saying what that you saw my analysis of what Scott Horton said in that Piers Morgan Uncensored in his book Provoked. And you think, okay, if you had lots of Scott Hortons around you, that's why you believe this. Why is he not being corrected? Every time he goes out and says this factually incorrect stuff, why is he not being corrected by those people around him? Like, if you had a decent advisor, you come back down and say, oh, actually, Mr. Trump, I just need to say something about what you said there, because actually you're not quite correct. And you try and massage him towards correcting himself in future. These people are like, well done, Donald, you said exactly what we think you should say. And in fact, we told you to say that. We fed you that stuff. So the disinformation is at heart coming, I think, from those around him. It's this cabal of people who have this distorted view of the world. That is, and these people are now being voted in. I mean, this administration has been voted in. We are in very troubling times. The next 4 years is very troubling. You can bang on about transgender toilets and accuse Kamala Harris of being well for that and the woke left, right? But that was a mischaracterization of what was going on. The reality is that there's a much greater understanding of fact-based reality, I think, with the Democrats in America than with this genre of Republicans. Not all of them. So you have some sensible ones, but they are being diluted out of the party. You've had Adam Kinzinger, massive supporter of Ukraine, saying the other day, I don't think the Republican Party is my party anymore. They do not stand for democracy anymore. Interesting. So this stuff worries me, and I think it should worry all of us. I mean, he's banging on about saying, I mean, Jesus wept. He's going to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. This is all just, I don't know, grandstanding the US in a way that's it's just weird.
Mexico's really in trouble, a lot of trouble.
Much
Very dangerous
louder.
place. And we're going to be announcing at a future date pretty soon. We're going to change, because we do most of the work there and it's ours. We're going to be changing, sort of the opposite of Biden, where he's closing everything up, essentially getting rid of $50 to $60 trillion worth of assets. We're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America.
Because we do all the work there. What?
Which has a beautiful ring that covers a lot of territory. The Gulf of America, what a beautiful...
You were whinging about inflation. Frickin' sort out inflation if you think it's such a problem. Stop going around renaming stuff. It's pathetic.
name. And it's appropriate. It's appropriate. And Mexico has to stop allowing millions of people to pour into our country. They can stop them. And we're going to put very serious tariffs on Mexico and Canada, because Canada, they come through Canada too. And the drugs that are coming through are at record numbers.
So we've got a reiteration of putting tariffs on two of your allies, Canada. So on the one hand, yeah, we love Canada. We want you to be part of us, but we're going to whack tariffs on you. Just absolutely incredible stuff. Then he talks about Pierre Poilievre. I always mispronounce his name, not because I can't pronounce French. I've got a degree in French, because I never actually can remember how it's spelled. Is it Poilievre or Poilievre? Anyway, it's PP. Pierre Poilievre is Prime Minister, and he's the key to this annexation. So you've had Justin Trudeau stepping down, essentially, giving up as being the Liberal leader. They're selecting a new one, and then we'll have to see politically what's going to go on. It looks like the Conservatives are probably going to walk in. But then you've got people like Doug Ford. Is he in charge of Ontario, Governor of Ontario? Saying really strong things about Trump. Trump's got absolutely no chance of making Canada the 51st state, and he's a kind of MAGA, like in times past. I mean, Canada's a funny place, because nationally you've had this Liberal government in, but there's certain areas that I think the way that Canada is politically, I'm no expert on Canada, but the way it politically works is the different states will have greater sovereignty actually over, and greater power over what goes on in their states, rather than a kind of national level. And I think you look at places like Alberta, I believe you've got this growing sense of actually democratic backsliding in Alberta, where the leader there, she's taking it backwards towards an autocracy. And anyway, I digress. You got someone like Doug Ford, who you would otherwise expect to be, rather Trumpist, is being very strong against this move of Trump.
Mr. President, if we were to work under the assumption that you're serious about making Canada 51st state of the United States, the leader of the Conservative Party in Canada said, under no circumstance will it ever be the 51st state.
Maybe he won't win, but maybe he.
So PP has said, you got no chance of that happening. He said, well, maybe it won't win. So now he's sort of trashing his kind of allies, if you like. This is not, like, if I was advising Trump, I'd be like, mate, You want to have people on side in Canada who are going to try and lead. You can't just unilaterally go and do this to Canada. And if that's what you're planning on doing, then you are no better than Russia. If you're planning on seizing Canada economically or militarily, then you are doing to Canada what Russia has kind of wanted to do and is doing to Ukraine. Okay, it might not be as violent. Well, I don't know. I mean, although he denies it's going to be a military takeover. I mean, I can't believe we're even freaking discussing this. What is going on? Who voted this absolute dingbat in?
Well, I don't.
You had suggested.
Listen, I don't care what he says.
But Sir Lopez, you said you were considering military force to acquire Panama and Greenland. Are you also considering military force to annex and acquire Canada?
No, economic force.
And by the way, he didn't deny he's going to use military force for Canada and Greenland. Just throw that one out there. You've said that you could use military force for Panama and Greenland. Are you going to do that with Canada? He says, no, I'm not going to do it with Canada. Okay. What is going on?
Because Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like, and it would also be much better for national security. Don't forget, we basically protect Canada. But here's the problem.
It's really dangerous. So he's talking about an artificially drawn line. Now, I talk about arbitrary lines in the sand, and the maps are agreed by consensus. And when we agree by consensus, we draw maps. Like, there is no objective reality to the border in Canada and America or any border around the world. And what we do is we agree on it. But actually, historically and even still now, as you can see with Ukraine, is that bullies go and take more land for their own resources, for whatever reason they do it. They go and take land, and then eventually that becomes normalized, and then it gets written into a map. These are arbitrary in a sense, like there's no objective reality to these lines. But to call them artificial is really, really controversial. They're not artificial, they're agreed by consensus. And in fact, those people the other side of that line have self-determination. And they have the democratic right to elect their own leader and to pursue their own future. You don't have that right. The only way you have that right, if you like, or the only way you get that done is by being an aggressive invader, by being a bully. And that is what Mr. Anti-War, I'm the anti-war president, no wars on my watch, etc., etc. That's what he appears to be advocating.
With Canada, so many friends up there. I love the Canadian people. They're great. But we're spending hundreds of billions a year to protect it.
He just sees it as it's like his divine right to have Canada under his auspices because, hey, we spend lots of money protecting it or some such thing. Dean Blundell says, lols, everything this, he says Grapist, says about Canada is a lie. America needs our milk, lumber, steel, water, electricity, LNG and oil. Canada's trade surplus with the US exists because we're better at trade agreements. It's not a subsidy. Trump also mocked Poilievre today, so it wasn't all bad.
No right. But why are we supporting a country, 200 billion plus a year? Our military is at their disposal. All of these other things, they should be a state. That's why I told Trudeau when he came down, I said,
they should be a state. There you go.
What would happen if we didn't do it? He said Canada would dissolve. Canada wouldn't be able to function if we didn't take their 20% of our car market. They send us hundreds of thousands of cars. They make a lot of money with that. They send us a lot of other things that we don't need. We don't need their cars, and we don't need the other products. We don't need their milk. We got a lot of milk. We got a lot of everything.
Does he actually believe in a free market? Like, we don't need their X, Y, Z, whatever. We don't need their milk. It's not like you do because you're buying it, right? I mean, it depends how you define need. But just, I don't know, just seems absolutely insane.
Really, no, he was unable to answer the question, but I can answer it. We're doing it because of habit, and we're doing it because we like our neighbors, and we've been good neighbors, but we can't do it forever, and it's a tremendous amount of money. And why should we have a $200 billion deficit and add on to that many, many other things that we give them in terms of subsidy? And I said, that's okay to have if you're a state. But if you're another country, we don't want to have it. We're not going to have it with European Union either.
He doesn't understand macroeconomics. I mean, this man is so ignorant. It's just unbelievable he's been voted in again. Like he thinks that trade deficits are subsidies. Like, we are subsidizing your nation. Yeah. Improve your trade, mate. Like, do a better trade deal. You actually you got rid of NAFTA and signed a different trade deal. And then now you're complaining that your entities, your corporate entities, are going and manufacturing things in Mexico and whatnot. Well, you're the one that sorted out a free trade deal. So, if you are a big fan of free trade, I don't know how you deal, which is normally where the Republicans are coming from. It's kind of libertarian, economic liberal, Republican legacy appears to have been destroyed. And now they are little Englander, little Americana, isolationists. Except they're not isolationists because they're talking about invading other countries or expanding or imperially taking on these other sovereign democratic nations. This is insane. NATO must be thinking, holy crap, what's going on at the moment? Because it looks like one of our the main NATO nation is looking like they're going to go to war with freaking Denmark. As Spencer Fernando says, there you go, Canadian Trump supporters. Trump doesn't care what Poilievre says, and he views our border as an artificial line. The tariffs are also clearly meant to wreck our economy and force us into submission. This is a clarifying moment. You can't call yourself pro-Canada and support what Trump is doing. So that's a message for those in Canada who might think Trump is the right thing to happen to America. Justin Trudeau says today, there isn't a snowball's chance in hell that Canada would become part of the United States. Workers and communities in both our countries benefit from being each other's biggest trading and security partner. I mean, it'd be interesting to look at indexes comparing well-being in Canada to, in fact, let's go and look at that happiness index of Canada to the US. There you go. Canada is the 13th happiest country in the world, according to the report. The score is 7. It's lowest since the report began releasing information in 2012. Yet still still 10 points higher than the US, or 0.1 points higher than the US. So it is it is above the US. 2024 stats. Let's have a look at that. So marginally happier than the US. So, why would you want to degrade your status to go down? It would be rather bizarre to do that. So let's have a look at where they sit. Canada 15th and the United States 23rd. So they are 8 places above the US in terms of happiness. And by the way, I've written articles on the World Happiness Index. It's fascinating, and it's much, much more complex than just like, hey, I'm happy. Loads of like well-being, trust in institutions, all sorts of things go into how they tabulate that, how they calculate that. And it's far more complex. So, why would the Canadians go, yeah, I'll tell you what, we want to be part of the US. Like, our healthcare system is better, etc., etc. Insulin doesn't cost X, Y, and Z. Anyway, as this person said, this MFer said it's too hard to lower the cost of groceries. So recently he said, oh yeah, it turns out that we're not going to lower prices, like I said. And he's caught on camera at rallies saying that umpteen times. So again, is this stupidity and ignorance, or is it lying to your electorate? Which one is it? Because he said, we are going to lower the cost of groceries, and then he gets elected, and he says, oh, it turns out that it's too hard to lower the cost of groceries. Who knew? Okay, I've just been duped again if I voted for him. But now it's like, oh, it's too hard to lower the cost of groceries. So what we're going to do is we're going to buy Greenland instead. And we're going to go and have a trade war with Canada and Mexico and the EU and China, and we're going to get rid of 15 million immigrants, and we are going to go nuts with Panama. And all of that's not going to be inflationary at all. So anyway, Donald Trump says, I am hearing that the people of Greenland are MAGA. My son Don Jr. and various representatives will be travelling there to visit, and I showed you this, and I showed a video of them there in my last video. Visit some of the most magnificent areas and sites. Greenland is an incredible place, and the people will benefit tremendously if, and when, in other words, it will become part of our nation. We will protect it and cherish it from a very vicious outside world. This is like an abusive partner. Hey, you come in a relationship with me, I'll protect you. I'll protect you. I'm going to beat you into this relationship, but I'll protect you. Make Greenland great again, he says. As Carl Bildt says, at least Trump today ruled out using US military force against Canada, but he didn't rule it out against Denmark. If higher tariffs weren't enough to get it to agree on the Greenland issue, this is rapidly moving from the absurd to the dangerous. It's absolutely insane what is going on. I can't tell you how insane the last few days has been. This is just nuts. Now, we've got the Danish Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, says Greenland is still not for sale as Donald Trump Jr. and Charlie Kirk arrive to put on some bizarre show. She said that Greenland's Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, has been very, very clear that they don't intend to become part of the US. How come the Trump family can't comprehend the word no? Hashtag me too. Greenland. Canada. Jim Sciutto says from CNN, a reminder, Denmark, as a fellow member of NATO, is a US treaty ally. It exceeds Trump's demand to spend 2% on GDP on defence, and it fought alongside US forces in Afghanistan in frontline operations, losing several dozen soldiers. And that's in reply to Caitlin Collins saying, asked if he could assure the world that as he tries to take control of Greenland and the Panama Canal, he would not use military or economic coercion. Trump tells the reporter, no, I can't assure you on either of those two. A remarkable moment. So when it comes to Denmark and Panama, he can't assure us that he won't use military or economic coercion. Now, maybe he's getting away with a little bit of awe there. But in that answer to the other question, when he said, well, you know, you haven't ruled it out for them, but will you rule it out for Canada? He said, I'm not going to do it with Canada. That's going to be economic. So the implication there is that, yes, he is considering military action with regard to Greenland. Julian Rutke here says, whoever supports Donald Trump's statements on Greenland must also support a Chinese invasion of Taiwan and a Russian invasion of Ukraine. This is darkest imperialism, which we as a civilized world must oppose in any way, hoping no American general will fulfill these criminal orders. Absolutely insane. And Mehdi Hassan says, he's the anti-war president. He's the anti-war president. He's the anti-war president. He's the anti-war president. Of course he is. He's the... No, maybe he's not. And interestingly, David Frum says, and he's a former Republican, I believe, President-elect Trump's words today underscore this. His approach to foreign policy is not isolationist. His approach to foreign policy is predatory. He is the thug walking around in the dark of the night waiting to mug or kidnap the weak person opportunistically to take advantage of them. That is what he wants America to be. Walking around the world, helping himself. It's like we've gone back to the 1700s and the British Empire sailing around the world and sticking their flags in countries and saying, that's ours now. You don't have a flag, do you? Thank you very much. We'll have that. Trump is just like, Greenland. Oh, that's nice, isn't it? A load of rare earth metals up there. I will have that. Thank you very much. Canada, next door. All right. You're right there. Yeah. Can have you. Oi, Mexico. Stop doing that. Or we're going to whack on some tariffs with you. What else can we do? EU. Don't really like you. I only really like dictatorship. So as long as you're Kim Jong-un, Vladimir Putin, Jair Bolsonaro, actually I liked him, Xi Jinping, he's a good man. So if you don't know these, Viktor Orban, a lot of time for him. Robert Fico, good man. Unless you're these guys, don't really like you. So EU, gonna whack some tariffs on you because you're not buying enough stuff from us. What else can we do? Oh, it turns out we're in a world war. His approach to foreign policy is predatory. David Frum also says the plan: 1. Threaten allies. 2. Betray Ukraine. 3. Offend democracies. 4. Serve Putin. 5. Empower China. This is the time for Europe to go, US, do one. But the problem is you've got Elon Musk bigging up AfD, who will try and divide Europe from the inside. You've got Marine Le Pen, you've got Jean-Marie Le Pen, died today at the age of 96, but her father, who was essentially a Nazi, with Rassemblement National trying to do the same thing. You've got all of these movements in Europe being supported by Putin and Musk at the same time. And you're like, we've got a tough job in Europe and the UK. You've got Musk attacking Labour in the UK because he wants some kind of right-wing populism a la Reform. But even Farage is not, he wants Tommy Robinson. And you're thinking, I was worried about Ukraine before. Like 2.5 years, 3 years of being deeply, deeply worried about Ukraine and what it says about the state of the world and where the direction that the world is going in. And now the US has just had that election and the wrong people got voted. I'm sorry. I will say this. The wrong people were elected. People made a mistake and they voted in someone who is doing insane things already and he's not even in power. They said it's going to be shock and awe day 1. It's shock and awe day T minus 20. I hope there are some checks and balances in Congress. Shashank Joshi, I mean, he, really, a guy I really rate, the Economist defense correspondent. Please stop the simulation. I'd like to get off. Trump threatens Denmark with very high tariffs if it doesn't willingly transfer Greenland over to the US. This is a bully. Trump is a bully. If you support that, if you're America's first patriot in the threads, yeah, this is what America needs to do, you're a bully. And you're not very nice. And if you like this behaviour, you are not very nice. You have no empathy. You have no understanding of what other people might want in the world. You just think this is what I want that will give me more power. This is my greed. I want America to be able to walk into other countries and take control of them. I would like them to force Denmark to give us Greenland. Officials in Denmark and Greenland have repeatedly said they don't want to be part of the US, but he's going to whack on some very high tariffs on Denmark if they don't give him Greenland. And he hasn't ruled out the military. Now, Phillips O'Brien said, and this is the key. Why is Trump and Musk, why are these people not being like this, not being strong against the bad people on earth? He's going after Canada and Denmark, the EU, Mexico, but he's doing the square root of naff all about Putin. Phillips O'Brien, would be nice if he offered to use economic force against Putin. What's he said about sanctions against Putin? He's talking about tariffs against Mexico, Canada, probably Panama, the EU, yes, China. Says nothing about Russia. Putin, yeah, you're right, mate. And while his son and Charlie Kirk went over to Greenland and they put a load of MAGA hats on people, they did this video and then he was speaking on the speakerphone on his son's phone to this assembled literally handful of people. The poster boy they got for this, hilarious. So the video Trump posted on Truth Social of a man in Greenland in a MAGA hat saying he wants the US to take over happens to be a convicted drug trafficker. Turns out the man is a convicted drug smuggler and a violent criminal. Well done. Good effort there. There you go. So Truth Social. I'm hearing that people of Greenland are MAGA, he says. Yeah. So a bit of an own goal there. Now, here's the added bonus for today. So I've said my thing. I've got it off my chest. I'm deeply worried. Really, truly, deeply worried about the state of the world. America, you are worrying me. And Trump says the windmills are driving the whales crazy, obviously.
25 stories tall, 40 stories. They have one 70 stories tall. The blades, they take 3 ships to ship them.
And?
It's crazy.
No, not really.
You see what's happening up in...
Man, I can't wait till this guy watches the Discovery Channel. He'll be like... You mean we've been to space? We went to the moon? Melania, did you know we've been to the moon? Have you never seen a windmill?
The Massachusetts area with the whales, where they had 2 whales wash ashore in, I think, a 17-year period. And now they had 14 this season. The windmills are driving the whales crazy, obviously. And they had actually
obviously
over a number of years. Over a number of years, and we don't want that to happen. It's a disaster for us.
So anyway, I mean, interesting conversation I'm sure could be had about that. Do windmills affect, out to sea, offshore wind farms, do they affect the sonar of whales? I don't know. But this is the added bonus I want to leave with you, because he is trying to attack alternative fuels because, wants oil to do well. He doesn't actually know the difference between a windmill and a windfall tax. I almost shared this last week, but I didn't, because I was like, it wasn't really to do with Ukraine. But here's my opportunity. So does Trump think windfall is a type of windmill? So he's reacting to Apache, an oil firm, blaming windfall tax. So windfall tax, for those who don't know, maybe it's an English term, so if you're foreign, you don't know it. It's when you tax an entity that has made an absolute ton of money, loads of money, and they have amazing times. A bit like BP during the Ukraine war crisis, energy crisis. The treasurer, the guy in charge of their finances, said, quote, "We have more cash than we know what to do with." Right? So BP admitted that they were making record-breaking profits. So the time that you're making record-breaking profits, especially at the expense of the consumer who's going through an energy crisis, and then you had not only BP, but then you had British Gas and the distributors. So you had the producers and the distributors making record profits because supposedly the Ukraine war, and then the consumer like, we can't afford to pay our energy bills, and so the British government said, well, we're going to have to set up Ofgem, our energy regulator is going to have to set up a charity to be able to help out people who can't afford their bills. I'll tell you how we can pay for their bills. They're making record-breaking profits to the tune of gajillions, right? So the call was for a windfall tax. Let's windfall tax, put one on BP and Shell, etc., etc. Okay, so Apache blames windfall taxes as a result of this kind of situation as being the reason it's going to leave the North Sea and not continue sort of drilling and looking for oil in the North Sea and whatnot. So they're windfall taxes, to which Donald Trump goes, the UK is making a very big mistake. Open the North Sea. Get rid of windmills. No, windfall tax, not windmill tax. He's president of the US. It's enough to make a grown man cry. Anyway, there you go. That is what is going on in the world at the moment, which is it's all going crazy. What do you guys think? Is this something we genuinely need to be worried about? I think it is. This has gone beyond, he's just larking around now. This is serious, and he's not denying military activity against allies. Honestly, if you wanted to give Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping the biggest damn Christmas present you ever could, the elections have just done it. Everyone who voted for Trump has given Putin a humongous Christmas present. There you go, Poots. Have at it. Here's your man. He's not even president. He's president-elect. He's like, yeah, I think we're going to invade this country, slam that country, do this. By the way, Putin, not doing anything with you. You can carry on doing what you're doing in Ukraine. In fact, we're going to stop helping Ukraine. So we'll stop helping Ukraine. And all the allies and NATO countries are going to probably pull out of NATO because actually we're going to attack one of the NATO allies we've got. So that's going to be fun. Anyway, good luck to us. Oh, and yeah, sorry, China. One thing we have done is we are going to make and I tried to stop this. I did try to stop this, but TikTok is now going to have to be divested. And it's going to have to be owned by an American. Oh, it turns out it's O'Leary from the Shark Tank, the Republican. Oh, it's all right. It's going to be a Republican. It's fine. It's not a problem. So it turns out that Meta are in my pocket now. Thanks for that £1 million, Zuckerberg. Washington Post and Amazon, £1 million for the inauguration. Thanks for that. Oh, and thanks for the $40 million Melania Trump documentary you're making, Jeff. Thanks for that, mate. I might give you a contract in space, but it depends what Musk thinks. Tim Cook from Apple. The old Trump misstep there. Yeah, thanks for the $1 million for that as well. Oh, OpenAI, thanks for $1 million as well. Oh, it turns out that we've made $200 million for the inauguration. We've smashed the previous record. Why have you given me all this money? Why have you given me all this money for an inauguration? You are genuflecting to me. You are getting down on your knees to me. All these corporations that said we weren't going to have anything to do with this kind of inauguration funding since January the 6th. They're like, January the 6th, it was disgusted us so much. 11 of those corporations have just given the green light to give Trump money. Where are your ethics? You just said January the 6th was, disgusting. We're not going to get involved. Oh, no. Okay, you are, because Donald Trump appears to be becoming more and more like a freaking dictator. I don't know. And I just think, I don't know, what do we as a people do? We've got to wait for the democratic process to come around again. Let's just hope the midterm elections in 2026 are able to put a dampener on some of these absolutely wild objectives. Good luck, world.